Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, an inspired conversation space between Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner on the journey of motherhood through the common thread of parenting, relationship, and sexuality as a path to consciousness.
We keep our conversations honest, our experiences real, and our philosophies exploratory. We believe that in order to raise incredible humans, we first have to raise ourselves. We know that in order to rock the family, you've got to nourish the mother. If you are here, you care about paving a path of conscious and intentional motherhood, connected with yourself and your gifts, and also illuminating your children in theirs so we may raise more whole humans who can impact this world in a more humane way.
If you desire to integrate your learnings practically and supportively, head on over to bridgetwood.life or julietenner.love to go deeper. And for all live-streamed pre-release podcasts and all our free content, head over to our free Facebook group, Nourishing the Mother with Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner. We are Julie Tenner and Bridget Wood, and we are so grateful you're here.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today's podcast is recognizing when you flipped from activism into stuck anger. And it comes from a beautiful listener's question.
It does. So this listener says, hello beauties. I have a pod topic I'd love to hear cover. I've been thinking a lot recently about how I toe the line of anger versus activism. I feel like when there are all of these big important things we crave to create and see change in, that it can be really easy to slip into being so enraged and angry and almost petulant at the world or figureheads that are stopping the progress. I guess I'm curious of how you both perceive the difference between enough fire in your belly and anger to create change, and when that anger tips over and becomes a beast. Maybe it's easier to be angry at these external things than face what needs addressing in ourselves first. Maybe it gives a sense of power to be angry when we feel powerless to create change at times.
It's so great because Bridgie instantly was like, oh yes, this is so good.
Yeah, I'm like, I love this conversation. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to pull it apart.
Yeah, so how we'd love to do this is just to offer some reflection because Bridgie and I both have lived this, and I would imagine continue to spiral through this through all of the different evolutions and shifts in our consciousness and in our value system. I do think we're always meeting our polarizations, and often that activist energy is part of that.
Yeah.
So what we really hope to do here is just to offer you some, it's this versus this. When it works for you and it's activating in all of the ways, beautiful, use it. Here's how you recognize it. And when it's flipped into something that is not so useful or helpful to you, then it's going to look like a stuck anger or energy in the body. And then it might look like these particular things. So where I would start this conversation, and then Bridgie will, I no doubt, have things to say about it when it has to do with some of the other points that are coming up, is the first thing I always think about is my heart connected or is my heart disconnected? Because when I'm fueled with rage, when that thing that I'm polarized on and that I see as such an injustice in the world and as harming to the people that I love and care about and the way that I see the world, it can move from something that uses my connection and my natural inspiration and my desire to affect change from a grounded place, thereby loving everyone. My heart's connected. I can love you in your difference. Versus my heart's totally disconnected. I'm in anger. I want to crush you. I want to squash you. I want to tear this establishment apart, which of course inevitably creates just as much harm as I'm rallying against. So for me, the first step in recognizing when this is useful and when it's spiraled into something that's more triggering from my past stuck stuff or whatever's happening in my psyche is, for me, is my heart connected? Can I love everyone here? And if I can't feel my heart, if I can't love these people, if I can't be grounded, my heart rate steady, calm, sacred space within me as I'm having these difficult conversations, or I'm moving through a methodical process towards change, then I'm not ready for it.
Yeah, another way to kind of almost phrase that is am I humanizing people here, or am I dehumanizing people here? Because when you're humanizing people, you're loving them in their humanness, and their humanness means that they're often going to see things and the world different to you. Whereas when you're dehumanizing and you're disconnected from your heart, then they're just obstacles, collateral damage. You don't care because you're so connected to your own anger and your own righteousness that you don't really care about the people around you.
Yeah. Well said. When we're connected to our self-righteousness. Yeah. Yes. When we're in pride. Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, and ultimately we get nowhere really with that, because we're very hard to hear. Yes. Yes. It doesn't grow any kind of relationship or transformative change or true sustainable activism from that place, because all you do, and we will have all had experiences of being so in people's faces about the thing that we're like so determined is right, or the correct way to be, or how to live, that it's really repulsing to other people. Yeah. And when we're not caring about the other person's experience or their values or their humanity, then that's how it registers. That's kind of how that activist energy registers for another person. Yeah, totally.
The next point that we had for recognition was, is this an experience of anger that pulls you forwards? Or is this an experience of anger where you are staying stuck in cycles of petulance, rage, emotional disturbance? In other words, is it motivating energy, or is it stuck, stagnant, cycling, spiraling into what we might term in inverted commas lower grade emotional states?
Yeah, like erratic, like, pinging off everything, like, blowing up at small things, right? Instead of it pulling you forward, you're just bouncing like an arcade game, like that little ball in the arcade game, which just pings off everything around you. Yes. Is that what it feels like?
Yeah, exactly. Because there's a really distinct difference, isn't there? Like when you tune into it, I mean, anger is such a wonderful emotion, which you and I have had so many podcasts on. So by all means, search anger and you will probably come up with 10 podcasts that we've specifically addressed on anger, because it seems to be the thing that women struggle with the most. And beyond that, mothers struggle with the most. So to be able to learn how to use the very potent energy that is anger and use it in such a way that you can disperse it through your body so it's life-giving, so it's energizing, and so it gives you that extra nudge to create the change that you wish to see in the world. That's what we mean by galvanizing, right? There's nothing like often fuck you energy to get the shit done that otherwise you'd be too fucking tired to even do. Right?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's like it taps into like this power source, this hypercharged power socket, right? That we have access to when we really use anger in that way. I mean, that's how some women get into the pattern, or I say women, but some people get into the pattern of rage cleaning, right? Because there's something like powerful about it, but sometimes it's actually really unhelpful for you, but you do get the outcome that you're wanting.
Well, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So you have a very potent, as you said, power socket or plug into this particular energy. The only consideration is, how will you wield that power? How will you wield that sword? That's the responsibility. Are you using it for destruction and squashing others? Or are you using it as an agent for change? Are you using it to affect marvelous, wonderful things in the world? Because it's the same energy. It's the responsibility of those in the power to use it. So I see that the same with anger. The next one we had is it consuming you with fixing everything outside of you? Or are you able to hold self-reflection?
Yeah, This is a really great question to ask yourself, because sometimes what can happen if our own inner world feels too overwhelming or too much full of guilt or shame or stagnancy, then we can start to kind of like look past that at everything we think out there that needs fixing. Right? Like that we see that's wrong in the world. And that might not necessarily be wrong, but it feels almost safer sometimes to focus on the thing outside of us that we don't have as much skin in the game with, that we can have an opinion on and get really annoyed about, but is actually well beyond our circle of influence, to put our energy, because we get to express it all, but we don't also have to be responsible for doing anything about it. So when we talk about this point, we're really talking about, okay, yes, have big visions. Yes, have big goals. Yes, dream of a new world or overhauling a system or, making a dent in a way that's really meaningful for you. But also not at the cost of, okay, is my own bed made? Am I raising my own children with the values that I see are lacking outside there in the world somewhere? Am I keeping myself accountable to dot my I's and cross my T's if I'm seeing things that are undone or unfinished, or people are lacking responsibility in getting done outside of me? Because if I'm not also willing to look at myself, then the outer world's going to continue to feel loud and oppressive and triggering, as an invitation for me to look also at myself, about my world of influence. Just a brief break to the podcast to let you know what's happening in our world. So in bridgetwood.life, you will find Reimagining Motherhood, which is a beautiful membership space where you can come into and really be held and seen in community of other women who are really seeking to expand themselves in motherhood and really be at that intersection of where conscious parenting and the whole woman collide. So it's not either or, it is this beautiful melting pot of the two, so that you can really dig deep and expand who you are on this mothering journey. And what about you, Jules?
Is Queen School. So Queen School is now an online course with 4 full modules that you are self-paced and work your way through, combined with 12 months of really stretching that out as I help you really integrate, embody, and move through the blocks so that you can literally become Queen School in your life. So Queen School is all about connection, pleasure, sensuality, magnetic communication, feminine energy, and embodiment with me over now a beautifully integrated 12-month experience. So you can find out more at julietenner.love. I don't think we can spend long enough on this because it's a bit of a head spin, really, isn't it? So all of this is sitting upon the universal law of reflection, right? So we don't see the world or other humans as they are, we see them as we are. Because we could all be involved right now in the same experience. And if we took an eyewitness statement from each one of us in a separate room, we would all have differences in the accounts that happened. So this is where we're trying to say we do not see reality. There is no one reality. There is only the subjective experience reality of every person, which is filtered through what has created the way that you see the world. So your pain, your values, your experiences that we mush together like a pair of colored lenses. So, which is why even in relationships can feel really hard, right? Because there can be something going on with your child and you see it one way and your partner sees it completely differently. That doesn't make either one of you wrong. It means you've got different lenses, which is exactly what you were saying at the beginning, right? People are not designed to care and see the world in the same ways that you are. We're designed with different ways of seeing the world for different purpose.
Yeah. And that's why there's always so much to gain when we can take ourselves to that edge where we want to put up all of our defenses and we want to bring in all of our self-righteousness and all of our research, especially in the case of parenting, to instead go, oh, okay, like this child in front of me or this issue in front of me, like would benefit from the intersection of my lens and my partner's lens, or my lens and that person, you know, who's got the completely different view of this to me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's the hardest thing to be in because
It's so hard. It's so hard.
reaction to it.
Yes, yes, yes.
It's like a chemical reaction. It actually is like a chemical reaction because it is. We're literally having that go on in our bodies, but it's where we grow the most.
Yes. Yes, which is why I think we can't spend enough time here, because if you get this one concept, it can completely transform all relationships that you have. You instantly become a more loving person and someone that more people want to be around because you're no longer in a state of judgment. There's them and there's us. You're either with me or you're against me. You're there almost as this equilibrium going, yeah, I see you and I see me at the same time, and I can love you all.
And what if there's room for both of us? There's no like, there's no better, there's no worse, there's no like,
we're just different.
We're both like meant to be here and exist with this myriad ways of viewing the world, of being, of seeing, all of that.
Yes.
And I had to pull myself up on this just recently because I was walking down my street and I noticed I was getting annoyed at this building that had like this like residential build that had been neglected. Like it had obviously they'd stopped the build, and they had on their like sign like all of these things that they require of the people working there in terms of like the quality that it needed to be left out, like no rubbish, like all this stuff, right? And of course it looks like the complete opposite, like it looks like a tip. And I'm like, you know, like whole like neighborhood, like I don't want my street to look like a mess. Like I was getting all annoyed and like seeing it like that. And I was like that close to going, I should ring them. I should tell them that actually like it's not reflecting well on their brand to have like a really messy site that's being just like discarded. And then I thought, oh, hang on. What's in that for me? Where am I not upholding my own integrity in terms of the brand that I put out in the world? Like where am I like, where have I dropped the ball in the way that I upkeep my space? Like it was just this total like I took myself right off this like I'm gonna like call them to like going, oh no, tend to your own world, tend to your own family, tend to your own realm, because that out there is an invitation for you to look at everything that you're missing too. And then it totally calmed down my self-righteousness and I was like, oh yeah, thanks, humbled, thanks. Now I go and look at where my bed's not made, where my brand doesn't live up to how I say it is, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I just love it. That's such a clear example. It's incredibly beautiful, which is why I'm really glad we're spending more time on this point, because this is the point, if you get this, that will change your life, right?
Yeah.
Particularly like you see it the most in activism, isn't it? So when everybody's not listening to you, well, they're designed not to. Where are you not listening, or listening to those that have a difference of opinion to you? So and so there's that. And then there's, I loved your point on just laboring on, procrastination can also exist in the form of allowing ourselves to be constantly consumed by causes outside of us that are so huge they will never go away, they will never end, and that we could forever be consumed by.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I think about that, like the example being, like I remember like 10 years ago when I worked, 15 years ago, maybe more, like I worked in media and there was the TV channel that I worked for was all behind this like U2 event, and it was all about Make Poverty History. And I just thought it's like so, I love the concept and I got so behind it, but you know, as you and I know with universal laws, like it's a fantasy. And yet, so how often do we get consumed by the fantasy of a one-sided world and the fantasy of affecting great change that's actually outside human possibility, right?
Yeah, totally. And then asking yourself, because I often think when we're doing that and we're so behind this thing and we're so consumed by it, that we stop focusing on our own lives and self-reflection, and therefore, as you had said, circle of influence. You have just as much opportunity to affect enormous change within your circle of influence. So what is your circle of influence? Your family, as you said, your kids, your friendships, your school systems, your work systems. Do you have a platform that you can speak on? Well, podcasts, blogs, social media, we all have circles of influence. So being able to recognize when you're just allowing, it's almost like a mental discipline, when you're allowing so much of the spinning of the wheels that you're so activated. You're either activated, ranting, raging, trying to work towards this, or just so consumed by reading all of the media and all of the posts and seeing the world and listening to the podcasts that get you enraged about all of the injustice, versus turning that into something that's heart connected and that you have and can instigate heart connected influence over today. Not just continue to spin your wheels and consume your time, not moving forwards at all. You're just spinning in the same place over and over and over and over. How can I actually bring this down into something that I can work with? So, I mean, I'll give you another beautiful example. Obviously, my prolapse journey that I'm going through, right? I still I have to watch myself in this, because even this, I ride waves of that petulant, patriarchal, hating, misogynist, raging against the machine aspect of self, which actually completely derails me. Like I want to smash everything around me. I want to squash men. I want to yell and rant like a crazy person, and I just want everyone to listen to me. I just want everyone to, I want to talk over the top of everyone until they agree with me. Versus going, whoa, my energy body is leapt out of my body and is so far ahead of me. It's out. No, so far ahead. Right. And I have no capacity to influence meaningful, or as you said, sustainable activist change.
You're just going to burn out
if I'm not even in my body. So this is where I remind myself to slow down and come back in. And what is the one most wholesome, heart-connected step that I can make? And how do I not get defeated in that process? Because so many of us like to say, the power of one, the power that one human has to influence the world. And of course, we see that over and over. And yet when it comes to us and our power of one, we tend to forget it, and we will stay on cause while we're full of rage. And then when we get burnt out and the rage dies out, so does the cause. And so change doesn't really last or happen. So it's recognizing when I'm burning my energy body like some sort of solar burn, and reminding myself to come back and make this more of a coal simmer that's sustainable. Yes, feel the bigness. Yes, know my why. But then come back to what is heart connected and how can I influence change in my circle of influence? I can just have the conversation with my friends. Well, as soon as I've done that, they've had conversations with their friends. And then those friends have had conversations with their friends and their mums and their sisters and their daughters.
And that's a ripple effect.
And now we're having conversations that we would otherwise never have had. And I've talked about it on the podcast. And I've had so many women saying, thank you so much. My journey was this. I can't believe I have a space to talk about this. It's opened up this. I'm now having these conversations in my mother's group. So having conversations with my surgeon that she's never had with anybody else changes the way that she sees the world.
And what does that open up for the conversation she then goes on to have with other women?
Right. And other health professionals and the research that she seeks out potentially in the future. So yes, I would love that there was a bigger scale activist faster moving government-based body that was like, can we pay attention to women's pelvises? Yes. But the beast and the machine is so big that I know this is not a 6-month burn. This is a 20-year life dedication to a slow snail's pace progress that changes the world. Snail's pace progress today looks like staying as heart connected as I can and having as many conversations as people are open to having with me, because we cannot underestimate the ripples of those.
Yeah.
And one day when I'm ready, the next one door will open, and then the next one door, and then the next one door. Change is made in small steps and with community. It's not made as an isolated island burning through people.
And I mean, that the same goes for even that example that I had around that Make Poverty History. I mean, it's made history in some areas of the world through what you're saying, through how can I notice in my community where poverty is an issue? How can I notice in my extended family where that's an issue? How can I, from my level of influence, help that person feel supported, feel connected, feel cared for? And then when enough people do that, then that's what changes. It's not from this, massive, like, beating our chests, yelling at corporations, from our armchairs, making everybody else responsible but us.
Yes. Yes, I love it. It's perfect. So, Bridgie, how do we connect with you in the world? And what have you got going on?
And me at bridgetwood.life. All things reimagining motherhood for the remainder of this year. So we're moving into embodying spaciousness. So how do we do that amid the demands of children's big feelings, amid the demands of our own yearning for our own lives, of our obligations, of our lives, essentially? What can we do as daily practices? What can we do in terms of how we set up our worlds to have that greater sense of spaciousness and choice? Because without any spaciousness at all, we're simply just reacting to life, and that's not fulfilling. So we're carving out room to have those conversations and practices inside Reimagining Motherhood. What about you, Jules?
Over at julietenner.love, it would be all things a Queen's School journey within Honey Club. So whenever you sign up, it's a 12-month journey, and you essentially trust me to guide you through the daily and weekly practices, slowly, gently, that create enormous change in how you see the world, men, the masculine, the feminine, and you within it. So you can find out more at julietenner.love.
Remember to nourish the woman, rock the family.
And we'll see you next week when we continue to peel back the layers on your mothering journey.
Thank you so much for listening. We literally couldn't do this without you. Please share this podcast with anyone you think it would be medicine for.
If you desire to integrate your learnings practically and supportively into your life, then head on over to bridgetwood.life or julietenner.love to go deeper.
And if you feel like giving back a little to this free content, please rate us on iTunes or Facebook, all of which helps the podcast reach more mamas who need this type of tonic for the soul.